YouTube has now begun. Hello, everyone on YouTube. Welcome to tonight's live stream of the Slash Filmcast. And I'm about to hit start on the Zencaster recording in about 10 seconds.
Okay.
Once I hit start recording, I'm going to give another count from 3 to 1. Then I'm going to go to each one of us for our opening statements. And then we're going to get into the show.
Then I'm going to adjust my underwear slightly. And then I'm going to lean forward and clear my throat.
I tweeted if anybody's lazy and just wants to retweet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
You're describing me.
Yes. I'm looking in several directions.
To quote the Empty Man, where were you? Okay. Here we go.
Dude, that shot you posted, Dave, unreal.
That movie's beautiful, but
It's a beautiful movie. It's a beautiful
Unreal.
movie. All right.
Yep.
Here we go. Pressing start recording. Now here we go in 3, 2, 1, let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast. My name is David Chen, and I want Bob Odenkirk to step on me. Joining me today is Devendra Hardawar.
Who throws a chair? Really?
And Jeff Kanata.
I still have 15 years to become an action star.
Joining us also today, he is the senior editor at Collider.com, Matt Goldberg.
I am no longer allowed on city buses.
Welcome to the Slash Filmcast, everyone. Of course, we're referring to our main review tonight, which is going to be Nobody, new action film starring Bob Odenkirk. What did I say? Were those the right set of words that I said?
Yeah.
We're going to find out whether or not he's a plausible one on today's main review on the Slash Filmcast. Before we get to that, we got some what we've been watching for you. And then for the After Dark today, we're going to be diving into The Empty Man. Who's burping? Jeff, you just burp into the mic?
I did, but I muted it.
Nope, you did not. That's on the record now,
You
baby.
just burped
What?
straight into the mic, Jeff.
I muted it.
Please,
I had my finger on
louder
the-
and
wait,
slower next time.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Can you
Yes,
hear me?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Yes.
What? Why is my mute button not working?
Oh,
Oh,
okay, well.
yeah.
Sorry.
Somebody
That's
sabotaged you.
I use that a lot in this show, and it's just not working anymore.
Can you use like a
Yeah.
hardware mute or something? Or
That is a hardware mute.
Just hit the.
oh,
thing.
you're using
Yeah.
hard. Yeah. What about the
That's on the Go XLR, baby.
Well, I'm saying
Yeah.
use the one that's. How about use the one in the
On the window.
Zencaster browser? How about that?
It's
Yeah.
it's
It's a
betrayed
little-
you.
little
That is the
mic
worst thing to
It just had
stop
a f-
working.
It just had a firmware update, and
Yeah.
Mm.
evidently the mute button. That's a
Let's keep
that's
all
an
of this.
Yeah, no, we're
embarrassing way
definitely leaving all
to
this in.
learn
Yeah.
about that happening.
For sure, for sure.
Uncensored.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we found out now, as opposed to mid-show when Jeff started making weird ass noises.
Yeah, like in the middle of somebody talking.
Yeah.
Just
yeah,
like
yeah.
really muttering under his breath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Look at
honey,
this
it's
idiot.
okay. I'm just talking to these fucking guys.
I was wondering. You were making some like burping noises earlier. I'm like, huh, that's weird. I don't
I'm
usually hear
sorry.
that.
I just had, I come right from dinner, and sometimes there's a little bit of that needs to come out.
This
But
really
that's
makes
what
me.
that's what the
I
mute
wish we
button's
had the.
for.
We need the technology to produce smells through podcasts. That would really complete the
The
experience.
smell cast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as long as this is all being removed from the final show.
All right, Jeff. So
sure.
you use the Zencaster mute button for the rest
Yeah,
of the show.
yeah.
Okay,
Lesson
cool.
learned, Dave.
Okay. So what was I saying? For the After Dark this week, for our patrons over at patreon.com/filmpodcast.
Wait a minute. I got to say one more thing because this is not the this is not the first podcast I've done
How many
today.
shows have you done
Yeah.
with this?
This is
Yeah.
the third show I've done today, and I updated that firmware last night.
Oh
So,
my god.
Oh,
A, all my other co-hosts are way more polite than you assholes, and B,
we're
now
the rude ones, Jeff. We're the
final,
rude
the
ones.
final
Yeah.
product in a lot of shows is going to be very embarrassing for me.
Listen,
we're
only the
rude
real
ones.
friends will tell you when you burp. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway,
Everyone
Wait,
else is a liar, Jeff.
all right.
Sorry.
All right. This is all being removed. Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
So today for the Filmcast After Dark, which is available exclusively to patrons over at patreon.com/filmpodcast, we're going to be discussing The Empty Man, a movie that most people probably don't know exists, but it's actually a mid-budget horror film that was made under the auspices of 20th Century Fox before they were subsumed by the Disney juggernaut. So look forward to that, plus a couple of other things we're going to talk about in the After Dark. In the meantime, Jeff Kanata, last week on the Filmcast, you revealed that you were looking at other houses you're potentially going to move out of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You've been
out of
traveling.
California.
Yeah, you left the state to look at houses, Jeff. Amazing.
Oh, guys, there's so much to talk
What?
about here. There's so much to talk about. The first thing I need to say is a huge thank you to all of the wonderful /Filmcast listeners that reached out to me after hearing last
Aw.
week's show. I got dozens and dozens of replies of folks giving me recommendations about both Phoenix area and the Raleigh area, the two areas that I mentioned on the show being particularly interested in. Folks offering up their advice, their experience, their knowledge of the area is so sweet. I'm so grateful. Also, I feel like I am a veritable Amazon distribution center because or headquarters because people are pitching me on locations all over the
Jeff,
country.
You gotta make this into a show. You gotta like start a Patreon just for your move. Yeah,
That's a great
apparently.
idea. Where's Jeff gonna live? The new podcast where
Who's
And,
gonna be
podcast.
but
the
you
sweet
have to
offer?
live where everybody tells you to. So
Yeah.
that's the rub.
I'm gonna
and
do
the
it
house
like-
they pick.
I'm gonna do it like Amazon, and everybody's gonna pitch me, and then I'll just go to New York. You know?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
Or not
comment.
go to
No
New York.
comment.
Yeah.
Anyway, go
Yeah.
ahead, Jeff.
Anyway, very, very sweet people pitching me on lots of Michigan coming in strong from a lot of listeners advising Michigan. A lot of people from Detroit,
Yeah.
all over the Washington, all over the country. People come here. Even international. Some folks going, well, come to Ireland, and I'm like, I would love to. Canadians recommending I come there. I don't think people
It
realize
is
how
so
difficult.
hard to immigrate to Canada. Yeah.
It's nearly impossible to be.
We've
an
all
expat
looked,
right
okay?
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, a very, very sweet and kind and thoughtful of a number of listeners. So thank you all for your messages. We did go to Raleigh, North Carolina this weekend, which was a wild experience. I mean, I could probably do an entire podcast just on the plane flight, which I'm sure you guys don't want to hear about, but flying, first time I've flown in over a year.
Man.
It's just bonkers how busy the airports were. The LAX was as if nothing had happened. It was completely wall-to-wall people. Southwest Airlines, which we flew on the way back, they sell every seat. And sorry, every single seat on this flight is sold. So I hope enjoy sitting next to everyone. Unbelievable. Anyway, all of that, we don't need to get into all that, but that was a whole thing. Raleigh, North Carolina is beautiful. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous place. We were very excited to be there. If you recall from last week, big part of the impetus for this entire move or potential move is the fact that the housing market is crazy in my area, and we're looking and seeing that our house, which we only bought 4 years ago, could get a much bigger price than we paid for it. We could end up coming out ahead, and so it prompted us to go, well, let's take that money and maybe give ourselves a little bit of a retirement nest egg and take a big load of stress off of our shoulders right now. Well, it turns out, fellas, the housing market is crazy everywhere.
Yeah, it's a seller's market.
Yeah, this whole country, it turns out, is one big thing.
I don't think seller's market is quite covers it. So the first day, we had 3 days in Raleigh, and we had a realtor there on the ground who booked us back to back, nearly back to back appointments on all kinds of places all over the place, because we didn't know which exact locale, which region of what they call the research triangle we were most interested in, because we weren't familiar with the area. So we had lots of appointments. So the first day, the first appointment was at 10 a.m. We get there. The first place we see, we're like, this place is great. This is great, but there's no way we can leap at the first. We have back-to-back appointments. We can't just put in an offer on the first place we see.
It's
on
like
the first
casting
day.
the first person you see in an audition. It's like
Literally the first piece of a real estate advice you get is
if this is great, imagine what we're going to see over the next 2 days. It's going to, it's amazing. We're already in. By the end, midway through the first day, we're like, boy, every place we've looked at, we keep comparing to that first place. Do you think maybe we could swing back by and look at it again? Or we want to make sure we're not just like looking back with rose-colored glasses.
It's gone. It was gone.
2 p.m. it was sold, guys.
Yep.
Oh
Yep.
my
10
God.
a.m. it was, come look at it. 2 p.m. it was sold. Not It was sold. They had accepted an offer at 2:00.
At
There
5
was an
p.m. they had
open
already moved
house
in.
the next day that they canceled. They canceled an open house because they got an offer so bonkers that they just had to take it off the market.
Wow.
So that's what we're dealing with. 10 a.m., come see it. 2 p.m., sorry, it's gone.
Yeah.
And I mean, the house had been put on the market the day before. So we were looking at new builds. New builds are a year away with COVID. There's like no materials. Nobody can get materials. There's 150 people on a waiting list for a new build just for an opportunity to bid on the one that they release per month so that they can start building it. And then it's 9 to 10 months after that before you can move in. And then what do you do if you sell your place here? It's insanity, dude. And literally every person, you know, we were going around all these areas with our realtor, walking into these offices and meeting the sellers' realtors. And every single time the person's like, I've been doing this 30 years. I've never seen anything like this. Oh my, it's good. And by the like fifth time, we're like, okay, we've heard it. We get it. We've heard it all day. Every time we walk in, somebody says they've been doing it for 30 years and they've never seen anything like this. But all of these people need to impress upon you how it's insane. They don't understand it. Somebody's like, I don't understand. The prices keep going up and the lines keep getting longer. I don't get it. So we vacillated wildly between being very excited and being utterly depressed. It just seems like an impossible notion. And there's nothing special about Raleigh, right? It's like this everywhere right now. It's anywhere you would possibly want to live. That's what the market is like. It's
so
just
Jeff, you got to go where the puck is headed, right? You got to find that spot and not the hot cities, I guess.
Well, we're trying. You know, we're not. The hot cities are like Austin and you know, Portland and Seattle. We're trying to go to like the next tier down, and even the next 3 tiers down is like that. It's. I mean, you have to go to
It's
really,
ridiculous, yeah.
you know, middle of nowhere to get anything that's even remotely available. So. It's going to be a process. I don't know what we're going to do. It's very, very stressful, and there's a lot of heartache involved because it all seems impossible and overwhelming. And, you know, I don't know what we're going to do. You know, the idea of selling our place and renting with a question mark on where we're going to end up seems really terrifying. And if it was just my wife and I, we would do this kind of adventure on a heartbeat. We'd like travel around. It'd be amazing. But we have 2 kids and they have to start school. And it's like, you know, we can't just uproot our lives without knowing anything. So
it's, it's tough. Yeah.
Is it useful for people to tweet you suggestions? I kind of said it offhandedly as a joke, or are you kind of like, you're
it's
full
been
up?
Fun to read. I mean, obviously we're not going to be able to just be like, oh, hey, a tweet about a place. Let's look at that. There's been some of that, but I appreciate it. Oh, I want to tell you one more thing about North Carolina. Again, this is, if you're not interested in the housing market, just skip ahead, you know, 5 minutes.
To the end of the podcast.
Yeah. I understand we're in the weeds and you tuned in for a film podcast and we're talking about the housing market, but I find this interesting. North Carolina, the state of North Carolina, has a law called the due diligence law. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of this. I had not. The idea here is that when you want to buy a house, you make an offer to the seller of the house, and then you do your due diligence. You do an inspection of the house. You check things out. You decide whether or not there are any problems that you have to discover. It's your job to do your due diligence to try to discover any issues that may impede your desire to buy the house. So you do an inspection, and you basically check out the house. In North Carolina, in order to initiate that process, you pay the seller a fee. The idea here is that because the seller is now taken the house off the market, they could potentially lose some money while you dither about and decide whether or not you're going to actually buy their house. And if you decide to pull out, they actually get to keep that fee. If you buy the house, that fee is applied to the purchase price. But if you decide, oh, actually, I don't want it, they get to keep that fee.
I'm following.
So it kind of protects the seller for this period where they had to take their house off the market, but they didn't actually complete the sale. In normal times, that fee is about $1,000 to $5,000,
Mhm.
which is still nothing to sneeze at, but is not a big
Yeah.
deal.
It's
in the grand
manageable.
scheme of buying a house,
Yeah,
right?
in the
a
scheme
$1,000 or
of buying a house, that's
$5,000.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It is kind of nothing compared to everything else.
Compared to
So
buying a house, it's a lot
Yeah.
of money, but in the scheme of buying a house, it's like it's manageable. Yeah.
Peanuts.
please.
Yes, it is. It's right. So now in this market, our realtor was telling us in order to even have your offer considered, the due diligence fee has to be above $50,000.
What the hell?
Holy
come
shit.
on.
Jeff, just go
$50,000.
home. Go home,
Now-
Jeff. Just
now I
enjoy
want you
your
to-
house.
I want you to really consider what that means. That means that you like a house and you really know nothing about it. You've walked through it. You want to buy this house. And again, the time periods are very compressed. So you're going, okay, we want to buy this house, probably offering you more than you listed the house for. All these houses are going above asking fee. So you're actually offering them more money than they are asking for the house. And you're saying, I'm going to give you $50,000 regardless of whether I buy it or not. Okay. So then let's say then you go, okay, I'm going to do my inspection, and there's mold in this house. There's termites in this house.
Mhm,
There's some
mhm.
shit. And you go, okay, in order for me to buy this house, you need to fix that mold and those termites. And then the seller goes, no, fuck you. And then you go, well, I'm not going to buy it unless you fix it. And they go, good, I'll keep your
Yeah, I know.
$50,000.
It creates all these weird incentives.
And
basically.
I will let the next sucker down the line give me another $50,000 to consider buying my house.
You could basically run a really nice business owning and letting people see a termitorium, basically.
Yes. As long as you don't see the termites when you walk through the house the first time.
Surprise termites.
Yes.
That's what you need.
They are $50,000 a pop termites. So the
Yeah.
entire notion, everything is broken right now. Like it just seems, the idea of it being a seller's market, like a seller's market is, wow, the inventory is rather low. Right now, it's like, it's just broken. The whole system, and there's nothing special. I mean, there's that
There's a
law
lot.
doesn't exist
Yeah.
anywhere that I know of other than North Carolina. But I just can't believe that law even exists. It's like,
That's pretty wild.
what incentive at all does the seller have to do anything you ask? It's crazy.
It
Well-
turns out capitalism is broken, and it's getting more broken every day. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, Jeff, I'm sorry
Crazy.
things have been challenging. Wishing you the best of luck in determining where to bring your family next. It's obviously a huge decision. So
Yeah.
good luck. Keep
Thank
us
you.
Good luck,
in the
man.
loop.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, I'm
It
sure
is,
you'll hear me
I
complain
went
about
through
it
this.
more.
It is a nightmare, and we didn't even get to fly to see the houses. So
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't imagine, man.
yeah,
I'm impressed that you did it, and it sounds like you did it, right before things got really nuts.
well, it was
but-
it was after things got really nuts in New York, and we were like, gotta get the fuck out of here. We gotta
Yeah.
go. So yeah, luckily I had family who could come and like look at places, and we did a lot of video chats. I have like a 10 gigabyte 2-hour video tour of this house that my brother did. So like all that stuff was super helpful. But yeah, actually going to see the places certainly would have been nice too. Yeah, good luck, Jeff. This is tough.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right. Matt Goldberg, I think you agreed to join this podcast because you thought it was a movie show.
No.
I mean,
Um,
and now I'm just like looking at Zillow. So.
Yeah.
But let's get into what we've been watching this week, okay? And of course, every week on what we've been watching, you can use #/tag to recommend on Twitter something you'd like us to watch. People can also search for #/tag to see what other people recommend. It's a very useful resource. Matt Goldberg, what have you been watching this week?
This weekend, I finally got around to watching Brian De Palma's 1974 film Phantom of the Paradise, which I'd heard about for years. I'd seen clips of it when I saw the De Palma documentary, and it's just one I had on my radar. And I'm like, yeah, I'm finally going to pull the trigger on this. I think I just bought it sight unseen on digital for like $7 or something.
This is the rock musical horror comedy
Yes,
written and directed by Brian De Palma.
Yes, and it's sort of difficult to pin down. Like it has elements of Phantom of the Opera and Portrait of Dorian Gray and Faust. And the plot of the film is that there's this sort of Phil Spector like music impresario producer played by Paul Williams, the great Paul Williams, who, if you don't know, he's like one of the greatest songwriters of all time. He wrote, Rainbow Connection, We've Only Just Begun, and he plays the villain, this guy named Swan, who is looking for his next big musical extravaganza that he can turn into a hit. And he comes across this songwriter named Winslow Leach, played by William Finley. And Leach has created a cantata based on Faust. And he plays it and he thinks it's really good. And Swan basically steals it from Leach and then proceeds to ruin Leach's life in a series of ways. Like, the more Leach just like good naturedly, he's like, "Oh, I'm sure it's just a mistake that you took my music and never called me." He keeps making it worse and worse until Leach is transformed into the titular Phantom. Um, and I don't want to spoil anything more from there. I guess it's the film's almost 50 years old. It's hard to spoil it, but I don't know how many people have seen it, and I think it's really great. It has a great kinetic energy to it. It was a film that was fairly early in De Palma's career, and while I think De Palma kind of gets an unfair rap for Hitchcock knockoffs,
Mm.
Phantom kind of falls into something unique. It feels like his own. It defies easy categorization, but it is a really strong film about creativity being corrupted by commerce and sort of looking for that artistic purity, and when it becomes corrupted and when it becomes maddening, and it's just kind of dizzying in that way, but it's also super entertaining. Williams also wrote the music for the movie, so the music is fantastic, and I can't recommend it highly enough. I had a blast with it.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear you enjoyed it. And it's interesting to reflect on like how you would, if you said Phantom of the Paradise, describe the plot, you would never guess that Brian De Palma directed it, unless you already knew his filmography, of course. A lot of these really interesting directors made these kind of more interesting, bold choices earlier on in their career. And it looks like Phantom of Paradise is one of those things. For some reason, I'm reminded of Francis Ford Coppola, and how he made One from the Heart early on in his career, right? Granted, it was after Godfather and Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, it wasn't
But-
quite early on. It was like it was his
yeah,
new
it's like mid-career,
step.
mid
Yeah.
career. But then like it's not like he like it almost feels like they like directors like to like dip their toe into the musical thing, and they're like, oh,
didn't
this
that
is-
movie basically destroy him too?
yeah, it basically ruined
Yeah,
his
yeah.
dreams, is what my
Yes.
sense is.
Maybe never do that. But yeah.
Well, I want to say though, like there are these sort of deeper cuts from filmographies, and like of course, like with De Palma, it's like, oh yeah, of course, I know his bigger films,
Right,
that he's done.
Carrie or The Untouchables or Mission Impossible, or of course the Nicolas Cage classic Snake Eyes.
Yes,
You know.
exactly. But like, I feel like sometimes there are these deeper cuts in their filmography where you can kind of sort of appreciate what they're doing, even if the film isn't as big or as well known as something something major in their career. Like a few weeks ago, I finally watched Presumed Innocent, which is a Alan J. Pakula film, and of course, it's not as big as Clute or The Parallax View, but it's a really good legal drama. But people don't really talk about it because it's like this weird like 1991 Harrison Ford movie, and it sort of gets buried. And so I think Phantom, I think has found its cult audience, but again, it's not like like when you're talking about De Palma, a film that immediately springs to mind when you discuss his movies.
Yeah. When I think of movies like Presumed Innocent, like the first thing that comes to mind is like what the video case looked like on a video store shelf. You know what I mean? Like that was my like first memory of some of those older films. But anyway, the movie is Phantom of the Paradise, and it's available on most streaming services. That's what Matt Goldberg has been watching this week. Jeff Kanata, what have you been watching this week?
Well, I had a chance to take up a #/tag recommendation, as I often enjoy doing. This was recommended by @wounded_kite on Twitter with #/tag. This person suggested The Kid Detective on VOD, and I tried this, $6 on Amazon Prime streaming. Tried it pretty blind, although I did read the description from the tweet, and it sounded like something up my alley. Creighton Duke, the wounded underscore kite on Twitter said, imagine if the Coens made a comedy about one of the Hardy Boys when they were in their 30s. I was like, well, that sounds fun. Often on one of my other podcasts, we have concerns. We do a bit about being boy detectives that are all grown up. So the idea behind this movie is that it is, what if those, the Encyclopedia Brown trope, that kid who was brilliant at age 12 and solved all those mysteries and all those books, grew up and was in their 30s. This movie is brilliant. It is from first-time feature writer-director Evan Morgan, and I love it. I love this movie. I had not heard of it. It came out in 2020. It stars Adam Brody as the kid detective. And basically the idea, it's listed as a comedy, and it is really funny, very dry, but it also gets really dark. It's really very much my sensibility in a large sense. It's like, what would happen if you peaked at 12? It's this guy who's in his 30s. He was
the answer is the Slash Filmcast every week. Basically.
So true. So true. All of us kid detectives,
except without the accomplishments,
except without any of the accolades. Yeah. So but it's great because the idea here is that this kid detective solved all of the kid detective type things. Those books, it's like, who stole the cookie jar money, or, what happened to the case of the disappearing dog? It's all these ridiculous kid mysteries that you would enjoy as a kid. And so that's the idea here, is that he solved, he says over 200 cases, but all of them are these ridiculously, unsubstantial kinds of mysteries. And I will spoil a very very minor thing from the beginning of the movie that I found delightful. But it is a bit of a spoiler, but it kind of gives you, I think it paints a picture of the kind of humor that I love in this movie. It's from very, very early in the movie, but you get a sense, there's a sort of a recap and flashback of him as a 12-year-old doing a lot of these wonderful, solving a lot of these crimes, these mysteries. And at one point he solves a crime about, somebody stealing from the candy store, the malt shop. Because it is very much this like idyllic, storybook version of America. And as a reward, as a 12-year-old, he gets, a lifetime supply of ice cream from the malt shop. He can get ice cream whenever he wants from the malt shop. So like early on in the movie, he's 30 something, and he goes into the ice cream shop again, and he's like, I guess I'll have pralines and cream this time. And the guy behind the counter is just so over the fact that this kid is still coming in here and taking advantage of the lifetime ice cream thing. It's to me,
you said
hilarious.
Lifetime, dude.
Yeah.
What
So,
do you think is gonna happen?
He's doing it, man. He's in his 30s. He's still coming in every day and getting a free ice cream because he solved a mystery, when he was 12. It's that kind of brilliant, I think brilliant, dry humor. But then the movie gets really dark as well. There's actually a mystery. The idea here is that he ends up taking a case that is serious. It's a murder. He was a brilliant kid detective, and now he's got to prove himself kind of solving this murder. This is a brilliant movie. I just think there's so many cool ideas. It's all so understated and interesting. I think Adam Brody, did I say Adrian? I meant Adam. I may have misspoke earlier.
No, I think you got it.
Yeah, you said Adam.
Yeah,
okay.
you said Adam. Yeah. Trust me,
Adam
Jeff.
Brody,
Trust
I find
me.
him. Trust you. You would have corrected me.
Yes, 100%.
Adam Brody, I find him to be such an interesting actor. I really like the choices that he makes, and he's making really interesting movies now. And he's not unwilling to play characters that are unlikable or do unlikable things. And I like this movie shows kind of the warts of that. And in a larger sense, it's really about the way America is versus the way America used to think it was. This idea of the version of America that we all read in those kinds of stories, those Hardy Boys or
Encyclopedia Brown. Yeah. That was my jam. Yeah.
It sounds a lot like the film Mystery Team, which
Yeah,
is again
uh-huh,
like
yeah.
Encyclopedia Brown type characters.
Indeed. It has much more bite than that movie. I love that movie. I mean, I love those guys, that the comedy team.
Derek, yeah.
Derek, yeah, they're so great. Yeah, so I like that movie a lot. This movie has much more bite than that movie does. I think that movie is much more broadly a comedy, and this is very much like it has a point of view, and it's an R-rated movie too. I mean, it's really an interesting film, and I'm very excited to see what this writer director does next. I hope this movie does well enough to launch his career further. I think, on IMDb, all he's listed at previously is shorts. So I hope this leads to more features for him, because I think this movie's really great. It's called The Kid Detective.
Yeah, I had heard about this. Was something that tempted me on a night that I was trying to figure out what to watch on a Saturday night, and I probably ended up watching something depressing instead. But it's on my radar. It's on my radar. So The Kid Detective. Jeff, you've been really bringing it, man, with the Rex lately. With the between Shiva Baby and this, I'm like I have stuff I gotta add to my list. So
yeah, I mean, this is all from #/tag. I gotta credit where credit is due on that. Those are folks really having great recommendations for me as well. But back to back, those two movies, I think both of those are first time feature writer directors, and it's really making me excited for this new generation of filmmakers.
All right, The Kid Detective is available for rent or buy on most streaming platforms. Jeff, what else have you been watching?
Well, I want to mention something that isn't technically a film or TV show. It's a video game, but it is a story-based video game that I think deserves a lot more attention. And I think anyone who listens to the /Filmcast would really benefit from playing this, even people that don't consider themselves video gamers. There's a game called Before Your Eyes, which was just recently released. You can get it on Steam. It is a very short game. You can complete it in less than 2 hours. Have either of you heard of this game?
Oh, yeah.
Any of you guys?
I haven't.
Yeah, I've heard some really cool things, but would love to hear your take, Jeff.
Yeah. So Before Your Eyes is a narrative video game along the lines of something like
is this the one where you blink and it
is
detects?
controlled entirely by your eyelids.
Yes. Yep.
Yes. So you need to play it with a webcam on. It supports any number of webcams, and you calibrate the webcam to be able to verify when you blink. And it's a very simple setup. And the game constantly says, hey, if we don't notice that you've blinked, please press the space bar at any time and we can recalibrate. I never really had to do that. It worked perfectly right away. Very simple. But yes, you don't push any buttons. You don't use a gamepad. You just blink at this game. And what you're doing, I don't want to spoil anything because it is a narrative experience. It is like I said, a very short, less than 2 hours. It's almost like watching a film or a television show, but it is interactive with your eyes. It's watching you and waiting to progress to the next scene. An icon will come up at the bottom of the screen. And when you blink, when that icon is up, you will progress to the next scene. And in a very broad sense, without spoiling anything, in a very broad sense, what this game is about is stepping back through one's life, watching these scenes, these memories unfold in front of you from the first person perspective. And the way the game presents them, you will see something happening. You will listen to, like, you'll start out as a very young child and you'll hear your parents talking or giving you a toy. And it's very much a scene as if from a movie, but done with CG. I mean, game graphics, very simplistic, abstracted game graphics. And then the scene will progress and this icon will come up. And if you blink, the scene will move to the next one. But the scene won't be over. It'll still be going. You'll hear your parents talking around you. You'll hear more dialogue.
The scene you were just in before, you mean?
Exactly. The scene, the icon will come up before the scene has come to a conclusion. So you'll often be interested in hearing more about what's going on, hearing more of that story in that moment. But you're trying not to blink.
Right? This is a Saw episode.
So I was so intrigued when I heard about this game. I'm like, this
Yeah.
sounds so awesome. Then I thought about playing. I just like pictured myself playing it, and I realized I would give myself an anxiety attack
No,
from
Dave.
not wanting to blink.
You'd have to
This is-
Ludovico
so-
technique
so-
yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What I thought the game was a staring contest with a video game. It is not that. The entire idea behind this game is this notion that life goes by in the blink of an eye, right? That this game is, you are doing something that you cannot fundamentally control. At a certain point, you must blink. And oftentimes you'll blink involuntarily. There are scenes where I would go past, like, oh my gosh, I forgot to not blink. I was listening, I was engrossed in the narrative. And that's entirely the point. I've talked at length on the show before about how I think ultimately all art at its core is about the human condition battling against time and the passage of time. We're always just trying to rectify time and how we can't stop it. And that's exactly what this game is about, right? This mechanic of progressing through your life, moving from moment to moment, going forward through memories, and not being able to hold on to it. You blink and, oh, it's gone. And now we're in the next thing. Oh my God, what did I miss? Oh, I'm here. As a parent, I think about that all the time with my kids. They're growing up before my eyes, and I can't hold on to this moment. I can't. You try to go, okay, cherish this, and it's gone. The kids progress into the next level of development. They're just the little thing that they are no longer very quickly. And to be able to quantify that, to express that through the interaction of a video game, it is extremely powerful. It is an extraordinary experience to go, oh, the point of this is to impress upon you how fleeting moments are. And the narrative itself is beautiful. I was bawling at the end of this game. It hits you like a Mack truck. The last line of this game has stayed with me.
Which you only heard half of because you blinked and were crying, right?
Right. The game is about creating art. It's about life and death. It's about these big ideas. There are things, you create art in this game by blinking, and the art you create will be different than the art I create when I've played it. And again, only by blinking. It's an extraordinary experience, extraordinary. And it's a game you can sit down and play through like you're watching a movie in one sitting, because it's less than 2 hours. And I guarantee you, if you try it, it will be an experience unlike any other. I was profoundly moved by this game, and I think it's a real work of art, specifically because this notion of it's not a gimmick. The blinking thing is not a gimmick. It creates this feeling of, oh, I can't hold on to time. It is these things. It's involuntary. It goes by. You miss stuff. You can't remember things. Oh my God. All of a sudden I'm this old, and how did that happen? Oh my gosh, life goes by in a blink of an eye. And that, you feel it in this game. It's beautiful. It's called Before Your Eyes.
All right, and I think you probably acquired it on Steam, is my guess, right?
That's right. Yeah, I think it would be a great mobile game. It would be a really great VR game.
I can imagine it would be great on phones, right? Because you have the camera, right? And you just got to hold it.
Not yet released on phones. I'm hoping they do. A beautiful game. If you have even a laptop with a webcam or something, I'm sure would be great. It's an extraordinary experience.
It's Before Your Eyes. It reminds me of in terms of movies, it reminds me of Boyhood.
Yes.
The Richard Linklater film. Based
Very
on
much so.
so.
Yeah.
It's a good moment for this. The Billie Eilish documentary I keep recommending to you guys. There's this moment where her dad just has that moment of her driving off for the first time in her car, and he's like, you can't, what can you do? You can't control, like, you can't tell her not to do this. You can't control any of this. You kind of just let life go by, It's amazing, and I'm definitely gonna check out this game. Thanks.
I think you're gonna love it, Devindra. Honestly, I think you're gonna love it. Yeah.
All right, that's what Jeff's been checking out this week. Let's talk briefly about Made for Love, the HBO Max original series that Devindra Hardwar and I both finished this week, right?
Yep.
So this is a show where Kristen Milioti plays a woman who is married to a tech CEO named Byron Gogol, who founded a company named Gogol, which I think we all know.
Oh, it's like based on Yahoo.
Yeah, exactly right,
Yes.
Jeff. Yes,
AOL.
I'm glad.
AOL.
Exactly right. And so he resembles like different aspects of many different tech CEOs. I would say the closest one that I would peg him to is probably like a Mark Zuckerberg type character in terms of his desire to like control things, and kind of based on what we know about Mark Zuckerberg from his public persona and what has been reported in the press. And he in the show, she escapes from the hub, which is their home, because she no longer wants to be surveilled at all times and wants to live life with all the rough edges. That's the very first episode of the show. Show came to a conclusion this week, and I thought we'd take a moment to just check in with Devindra. Devindra, what do you think of the overall show? Is this something you'd recommend to people?
Oh, definitely. I thought it was really interesting and funny, and it has a lot to say about kind of the state of our tech obsession, but also it is very much a show about kind of how we view each other and how we value the people we actually love too. Like the tech is the big thing here because it's all about surveillance, and yeah, it's the villain is basically a tech billionaire. But I think it does a really good job of like exploring these characters. I think Milioti is fantastic. Also,
Yeah, she's awesome.
Ray Romano is her father. And let me tell you guys, whenever Ray Romano appears in anything that's modern, instantly like a letter grade up higher. Like he makes everything better. And there's a bit of a surprise in terms of who his companion is. And I won't say that. I'll let everybody discover what that is.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is how much just him being Ray Romano humanizes that character and really makes you feel sympathetic for somebody who has a very peculiar kind of relationship, something that stigmatizes them. But that also reflects directly the way Kristen Milioti's character was treated by her tech billionaire husband. So I thought the show was a lot of fun. It doesn't all the mysteries of it aren't quite solved, but as a fun little character centric piece that touches on tech today, but also our relationships, I really enjoyed it. Certainly more fulfilling than a lot of the other short series we've gotten from HBO recently.
I would say it's all right. I didn't love it as much as you, but Kristen Milioti is so talented, and I think that she's asked to do a lot in the show, because basically you find out relatively early on in the show that she has like a chip in her brain that allows people to see what she's seeing and hear what she's hearing. And she has to kind of so she kind of like has to like talk to herself and kind of talk to the person who's surveilling her by talking into a mirror and stuff like that. And it's just like, it leads to a lot of really interesting acting kind of stretches for her. And between this and Palm Springs, that's two things I've seen in the last year where Kristen Milioti is lost in the middle of the desert and frantically trying to figure a way out.
It's true. It's kind of funny. But also she's sort of like the what do you call it? She's like the heavy that comes in certain types of things, right? Like she played a pivotal character in How I Met Your Mother. She appeared for one episode in Mythic Quest. She just appears in things and kind of leaves her.
She's like the ringer you call in. To,
the ringer. There
to
you
knock
go.
it out of the park or whatever. Yeah.
And this is like, I don't think it's the first series that she's fully starred in, but it does feel like one that is finally centered around her and those enormous eyes of her, and you can just read everything that is happening to her. Like there's the insanity of the situation, but the show is all about parallels, right? Because she was basically the place she was staying with her husband. She was with her tech billionaire husband for 10 years in basically a virtual reality box, right? A virtual, like just a box in the middle of the desert. And she escapes to a small town that is essentially its own kind of like closed small box too. So just seeing her kind of deal with that and her life issues and the fact that, Ray Romano was not the best dad, I feel she handled that really well.
She's great. Billy Magnuson's great. He's also in the show. And
I have to say, it is really funny seeing Billy Magnuson in the show because he was also together with Ray Romano in the Get Shorty TV series.
Mm.
Billy Magnuson played a character who gave Topher Grace blowjobs for money. That is how I remember Billy Magnuson. So boy, the tables have turned for him.
I
He
love
is a
him
very different character now.
He's great also in Game Night. He plays like the lunkhead in Game Night. And anyway, he's
Love that movie.
Really great comedic actor, and Kristen Milioti is great as well. So there's definitely a lot to recommend the show. Things where the show didn't do so hot for me. The tone, I thought I didn't feel like they quite nailed it. Didn't feel like they quite nailed it in terms of like having a consistent tone or a tone that like felt like cohesive to the show. And the tech stuff, which I thought was the most interesting, is ultimately just a sideshow at the end of the day.
Yeah,
I think
it's not really. It's not Black Mirror.
Yeah, it's not about tech. I thought it'd be kind of like Silicon Valley style, but it's really about the relationships between these characters. Like the tech is just a way to get you in the door, which it definitely did for me. So I would still say it's worth checking out, but I didn't love it. A lot of people seem to enjoy it though. I just felt like the pilot I thought was so good. It just really hooked me. And I wanted the rest of the show to be like that as well. And unfortunately, I don't think it quite stuck the landing. But it is available right now on streaming on HBO Max. It's called Made for Love. Season 1 just concluded. Devindra Harder, what have you watched this week?
I've checked out the first 2 episodes of Them, the Amazon Prime Video show created by Little Marvin. It's about a black family that moves from, very segregated, South Carolina? Like they move from the South to Los Angeles, to Compton, at a time, I believe it's the 50s, at a time where that's a white neighborhood and they're the only black family in there. And have to say, this show is one of the hardest things to watch I've seen in a very, very long time. I can't recommend this show. Like, I can't recommend it to you guys really, or our listeners. I think like it's so weird because it's a very well-made show. It's really well shot. Some of the acting I think the cast all around, especially Deborah Oyo Rinde, who plays the wife of the family, is fantastic. Shahadi Wright Joseph, also from Us, is here too. It is a horror show that also explores the horror of racism, but also actual demons and supernatural things that kind of haunt this family in this new house. But it is a series that is really just trying to say racism is bad, guys. Racism is very, very bad. And to sell that message, it just like tortures its black cast relentlessly. It is there's nothing. It's such a strange thing. Like it almost seems like a show that's trying to make its point relentlessly through the brutalization of their bodies and just them going through racist experiences. We never really get moments to sit back and talk with this family and figure out who they are, who these characters are, what they're trying to do, how they actually coexist with each other, because it's really just one scene after another of them dealing with racism right outside their lawn, because all the white women in their neighborhood just pull up lawn chairs in front of their house and blast music to annoy them, or the experiences the husband has when he goes to work and he's mistaken for the cleaning man. It is one scene after another of this, and it is just tough. And I've been told, when I started tweeting about this, people mentioned some things that happened to kind of midway through the show, and I will never watch that. I'll probably I don't think I'm gonna watch more episodes of this, but I'll certainly think twice about
there's some acts, for those who are curious, there's some acts of violence that occurred during the show that are so reprehensible that even listening to them is upsetting.
Even if I said, it sounds like as if Gus Van Sant had tried to explore racism in the US or something.
I think you're thinking of
no.
Not Gus Van Sant.
No, the other one.
The Antichrist guy, right?
The Antichrist guy, yes.
Lars von Trier.
Lars von Trier,
yes.
But it's as if they're two very, very different directors.
Yes, extremely. The good one was guy, Devindra.
It's, I mean, I would have also loved to see him
Gus Van Sant.
Yeah.
Gus Van Sant. But
directing Vince Vaughn in Racism in America.
Yeah, we really want Vince Vaughn to be exploring that.
Yeah, he's
too.
great guy to do that. Okay, anyway.
Great guy. There was a great review.
I think Vince Vaughn's been in a lot of Gus Van Sant movies. That's all I was. That's the
yeah. He definitely has. There's a review by Angelica Jade Bastion
Yeah.
called "Them is Pure Degradation Porn." It's on Vulture. I'd recommend you all read it.
Yeah, that's a great review.
Great review. Maybe check out the pilot just to see like the technical aspects of what they get so right in the show, because it looks amazing. The cast is great, and they kind of get a lot of period elements down right. But at the same time, watching the show, I'm somebody who cares really a lot about anti-racism and the way we think about race in this country and what people of color and especially black people go through in America. This show just feels like torture porn. It really, really does, and it kind of brings to mind what what Jordan Peele has done with Get Out and also Us, where he balances his message with some part. Those movies are comedies in some respects, but also you get to know those characters. There's a lot going on, and it's not just simply putting people through horrendous racist experiences and calling that content. So yeah, I found this really just genuinely upsetting, really hard to watch. Can't really recommend it to people. And I have to say also the entire like marketing campaign for the show is basically copied the Us marketing campaign, and the show's called Them too, which is just they knew what they were doing, right? They saw that movie, they knew that was happening, right? They saw how that movie was marketed. All that stuff just makes me feel weird. I did not like the show too much. It's a shame.
The show is Them, and it is available for streaming right now on Prime Video. And that's what we've been watching this week. Folks, let's get to some weekly plugs. We're going to do weekly plugs. Let's do weekly plugs. Weekly plugs. Let's do weekly plugs. Weekly plugs are the part of the show each week where we recommend something that we have been creating or that something someone else has been creating. It's also cool. You know, it doesn't have to be something we are in. But this week, I want to plug a podcast series I'm doing over at Culturally Relevant. It's a retrospective of 1 year in the Seattle pandemic. I interview people from all different industries, and we all reflect on how the last year has affected industries like the restaurant business or the live theater business. And I have a great interview coming up this week with filmmaker Megan Griffiths. She talks about how filmmaking has been impacted by the pandemic. Check it out over at culturallyrelevantshow.com. Devinger Hardware, what's your weekly plug?
Oh, I've been reviewing a lot of laptops recently. I just checked out the Asus Zephyrus G15. And it's something I really enjoyed. I give it a really high score over to Engadget, so I'd recommend checking that out. It is a 15-inch, really thin, really powerful machine. It starts at $1,500, and I like this Asus Zephyrus line. The G14 was my favorite laptop last year. This one is a little bigger, but still a really fantastic machine all around. So check it out if anybody's looking for a new machine. Gaming laptops turns out not pretty great these days. So yeah, check that out.
I can't. I personally can't deal with the compromise of a gaming laptop. I bought a nice gaming laptop the last year, and it's like, and I'm just like, ergonomically, I find laptops in general to be a bit of a nightmare.
Sure.
Like hunching over the table and the screen and the
what you do is this thing is just your on-the-go gaming machine, right? But you put it next to a nice monitor, right? You hook up an actual keyboard and mouse. Like you can do everything you could do with a desktop. And these things are still super powerful.
Yeah. No. Sorry. So, of course, it's a great.
Or just have a desktop.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like, well, of course, like if,
well,
if that's your thing,
you can't take a desktop anywhere.
It's true, but I can't imagine
now
going on the go gaming. Like even in pre-COVID, it's not like I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be playing. I'm gonna be doing my gaming in the Hampton Inn. I just don't know.
You have never experienced the joy of gaming through a 6-hour flight, sir, or an 18-hour flight, or hotels where just like you got your Steam backlog. Like the convenience, the freedom of having a powerful gaming. You take this machine, bring it down to your TV, hook it up to your TV. All of a sudden you get a thing that is more powerful than any console, that's around right now. So I think I like the flexibility of the gaming laptops. Yeah, I have a desktop. I also have a desktop. But the flexibility of these things is just fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeff, I think I'm in your camp, which is like, if you're gonna splurge with a machine, you might as well just get the desktop.
Sure.
Right?
I mean, yes. If you're now looking at all the use cases in which you need a gaming laptop, yes, you
I
are
think I'm
correct.
just-
you
I'm
are
just-
correct.
I just came of age in a time when laptops weren't powerful enough for that.
You
and
weren't.
so
I'm saying
in
they're
an-
amazing now, Jeff.
I believe
They're
you.
amazing.
I don't doubt what you're saying. I just feel like I'm like old dog new tricks kind of thing.
Sure,
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I game on my desktop because that's what I've always done.
Yeah,
Mhm,
I tried it. I bought a gaming laptop like a couple years ago, and I was like, I'm gonna really make a go of this, and I just couldn't make it work, Devindra. Couldn't make it work. I ended up selling it. But I'm glad that the
But
Asus...
you really need 20 cameras.
So you're gonna throw that in my face. But yeah,
Yes.
that's right. I'd probably just like it. Okay, the Asus Zephyrus G15 sounds like a
It's
great
pretty good.
device. Check out.
I
Devindra's-
did a video review too, so that's up
Oh,
on
nice.
YouTube. Yeah.
Nice.
At the risk of being even more obnoxious than usual, I
late,
years ago we had a sponsor. My old show, the Totally Rad Show, was sponsored by that company,
Mm.
and they over and over and over forced us to pronounce it Asus.
Mm.
It is technically Asus, but
Yeah.
they're not
Everyone
paying
says
me.
Asus.
My
I
bad.
used to say Asus, but
A lot of people say Asus. Even people
Yeah.
I know at Asus say Asus.
oh,
so,
it was
yeah.
so ridiculous. They're like, yeah, you need to do that again and say
Yep.
Asus. I was like,
Asus.
Asus. No one says Asus.
It's like people that tell me to that always correct me when I say it A24, but it's A24. You know,
Mm.
it's completely the same. I mean, do you say A24 or do you say A24? What do you think?
I actually
both.
say A24, but
Yeah.
I say A24 because you got to save on the syllable. You know what I mean?
say A24 because it's what they print on their overpriced sweatshirts.
But
always go by the sweatshirt.
yeah, I think that's fair. But 20 is an extra syllable, and like at the end of my life, Jeff,
Yeah.
which passes by in a blink of an eye, as you said. Like
Yeah.
I want to
Mhm.
look back and say like I saved precious seconds not saying the 20 in A24.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Every 20 counts.
Jeff Canado, what's your weekly plug this week?
Well, if you recall, last week I recommended people tune in to the Dungeon Run episode 81, which we recorded last week, and I said it promised to be a doozy, and I'm here to tell you, if anything, I undersold it. I don't like to do the same weekly plug 2 weeks in a row, but folks, episode 81 of the Dungeon Run was one of the craziest Dungeons and Dragons sessions I have ever been a part of. It broke me as the DM. It broke me. Dungeon Run, of course, is my live play Dungeons and Dragons show. More to the point, it's a big, fun fantasy storytelling show. You don't really need to know anything about D&D to enjoy it. And in this case, it became a completely edge of your seat, like what is going to happen. The team split up. One didn't know what the other was doing. The audience knew what both was doing, and each of them were completely screwing the other completely innocently, but because of what they were doing, they were completely ruining the plans of the other, and everybody was like, oh my god, everyone's gonna die, it was wild. So check it out on YouTube. You can also listen to it as an audio podcast. It's the Dungeon Run. Episode 81 is titled When All Else Fails.
Matt Goldberg, your weekly plug.
So normally, I enjoy writing stuff about like Marvel movies and Star Wars and like the stuff that gets a lot of attention. But one of the joys of my job is to sort of try to draw attention to smaller films that people may have missed, or sort of just films that I've discovered in my life and want to share with people. So I had the opportunity to write about a little double feature people could put together if they have Criterion Channel and Hulu. And that's to check out these 90s film noirs of the director Carl Franklin. And Carl Franklin,
oh yeah,
he's put together like a really impressive television career over the years. With directed episodes of Mindhunter, The Leftovers. But in the 90s, he was really breaking new ground with noir with these films One False Move and then Devil in a Blue Dress. And so One False Move is this sort of urban rural divide film that doesn't really tell you what it is until you get to this second act reveal. But the film starts off that there's been this horrible mass murder and drug robbery in Los Angeles, and the killers are fleeing towards Texas. And so a couple of LA cops are actually heading towards Arkansas because they believe that one of the killers will meet up with a family member. And when they get to Arkansas, they get together with the local chief of police, played by Bill Paxton. And he's really excited because nothing ever exciting like this ever happens. He has all these big ideas about it. And the way these two storylines converge, with one following the killers and the other following the cops, it doesn't really come together in the way that you would expect. And when it does, you have Franklin really saying something interesting about race in America and sort of who has which opportunities and who gets to tell which kind of story and what the freedom that they're allowed to have. And then he followed that up with Devil in a Blue Dress, which is a very cool spin on a post-war noir. It stars Denzel Washington as he was a World War II soldier. He's just been laid off from his job at an aircraft factory, and he gets drawn into this missing persons case because he needs the money. He wants to be able to keep paying his mortgage. And it's a really fascinating spin on the PI noir genre, because the film is pressing the question, well, yeah, Sam Spade, and he can go wherever he wants, but where can a black man go? Where can he go that a white man can't, and where can he go that a black man can't? Where what avenues are denied there? And Carl Franklin, who's a black director, he plays up these really interesting issues of race into the noir genre that aren't really explored. And
aren't really explored elsewhere or in his film.
Not really explored elsewhere in the noir genre.
Right.
And so he's sort of using his films to explore that. And One False Move is a film that barely got a theatrical release. It was intended to go direct to video, and Gene Siskel basically saved it, and along with some other critical accolades. And then Devil in a Blue Dress flopped. But I think it's found its audience over the years. And Devil in a Blue Dress kind of frustrates me a little bit because it came out in 1995 and it didn't do that well. And it's a post-war noir movie. And then 2 years later, LA Confidential comes out and everyone's like, oh, this is the most amazing thing ever. I'm like, you should see Devil in a Blue Dress.
Yeah, Devil is fantastic. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So I wrote up just basically an article about why these two films are amazing, and they're only on their respective streaming services until the end of April. So I'd strongly recommend checking them out. They're both great films.
All right, the movies are One False Move and Devil in a Blue Dress. They're available right now on Criterion and Hulu, and you can find Matt's writing about them over at Collider.com. Thanks for sharing them, Matt. Really
no
interesting.
Problem.
Let's get to our review of Nobody. Here's where the trailer for Nobody will go, Matt.
Okay.
That was from the trailer for Nobody, the newest film by director Ilya Naishuller. Stars Bob Odenkirk. It was written by Derek Kolstad, who's one of the people who worked on the John Wick films. And the plot summary reads as follows. A bystander who intervenes to help a woman being harassed by a group of men becomes the target of a vengeful drug lord, end quote. Pretty charitable plot summary there, I have to say.
Yeah, pretty easy. Yeah.
So, Matt Goldberg, I invited you on this podcast because you actually wrote a great review of this movie over at Collider.com, which is headlined, Nobody feeds an addiction to violence for both its hero and audience. And the subheading is, we can derive a lot of glee from watching Bob Odenkirk dismantle nameless goons. But what does that say about us? End quote. And that's going to be the question I'm going to start with you, Matt, in our non-spoiler section. What does that say about us?
I puzzle over it because I would not consider myself a violent person. I would not consider someone who takes glee in real world violence. I'm not watching. I don't want to watch. I don't even really enjoy boxing or MMA, but I also really enjoy violent movies. And what's interesting about Nobody, as opposed to something like John Wick, which for something like John Wick is also feeding our appetite for violence, but John Wick is sort of it's a fantasy world. It's this big, I think the John Wick franchise is that its biggest strength is that it's created so much world building around it so that you can kind of lose yourself in it. Whereas Nobody kind of works from the premise of, no, this is a real guy living a mundane existence that you can recognize. We all have
Mm.
sort of been in that world of like, oh, I forgot to take the trash out, and like being frustrated, and like I don't feel appreciated, and my marriage has gone a little cold, and my kid doesn't respect me. Like all these markers. And then Nobody kind of postulates, well, what if you had this sort of, burning violence inside of you, and you could let it out, and it would only hurt bad people. It would only hurt people who quote unquote deserve it. And it's weird because like that is the appeal of the film. The appeal of the film is violence itself, but constructed in such a way as to let us off the hook, in a weird way, to gratify our bloodlust without any guilt accompanying to it. And a film I thought a lot about while watching Nobody was David Cronenberg's History of Violence, which I
Mhm.
think is kind of exploring similar territory, but in a much more contemplative way. It's not meant to be fun in History of Violence, but both films are sort of reckoning with like, does our domesticity run into conflict with this sort of atavistic bloodlust that we, against our civilized norms, wish to enjoy?
Interesting. Well, Devindra, I'm going to ask you what you thought of this movie.
I'd say, and I really liked your review, Matt.
Oh, thank you.
But for me, like this feels just as much a fantasy as the
Yes,
John Wick universe. Like
100%.
this is
100%.
it. This is basically a John Wick side story, because like there are things, there's world building in this movie. There's like we won't spoil too much of what happens, but clearly this guy has a bit of a history, right? He's not just your average Joe. So like
This to me is like, hey, do you think John Wick has too much plot?
right?
Do you think
right.
it has too much like story? That's the question. Then check out Nobody. That's kind of my reaction.
Exactly.
But that's not to
Exactly.
say I didn't really enjoy the film. Anyway, go ahead, Devindra.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But no, certainly I felt that way too. Like I enjoyed the hell out of this movie. I think as an action movie, it delivers. It is the most dad movie to ever dad movie. Like it really
That's true.
accomplishes that goal of the dad movie, of man, if only I could do something, right? I am just a sad suburban dad with a boring job, and I have to take the bus every day. But if those punks in the bus, if I could just kick their asses, I'd feel so good. I'd have sex with my wife again.
Inside every dad,
Exactly.
there's a badass waiting to come out.
Exactly. Like it is that wish fulfillment, right? Certainly the trash every day, every week, and everything. We all have our own issues with that. Looking in your direction, Jeff. This is a dad movie. I actually watched this movie with my parents because they were over and they were vaxxed for my dad's birthday.
Yay.
Yeah, so that was fun, and I got to watch a dad movie with my
Your
dad.
dad
as a
kicked
dad.
the shit out of some folks after he watched
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah. Like they loved it. But certainly, the way this movie handles violence, like it is, it's a crazy ass revenge thriller. I don't think it's not like a gritty thing, right? It's not like Death Wish, but it does feel, it's campy in a way that is fantastical and enjoyable to me. And hey, like this is something we question a lot with our fiction, right? Why do we enjoy hyper violent fiction? This goes back to oral storytelling, and Greek mythology and the stories that we've gathered from ancient history. We really like violent things that can reflect things we can do and talk about that we don't want to do in polite society, right? So that always feels fun and interesting to watch. But certainly, how many mass shootings have we lived through this year alone? It is a weird thing to be
This
watching this
week
movie.
alone.
Yeah, this week alone. Yeah.
It is a weird thing to be watching. Like, yeah, it is a gun fetishizing, action fetishizing movie, and you feel gross doing it. I think it accomplishes its goal of being a kick-ass action movie. I was a bit worried, honestly, because when the first trailer for this movie came out, they showed part of the bus fight, and it looked bad. It looked telegraphed to hell. Like you could see Bob Odenkirk was just like waiting for the reactions.
1, 2, 3,
yeah,
4,
yeah,
1,
exactly.
2.
It was very slow. I think the final product shows the magic, the editing, fine-tuned editing can make for an action movie, because you really feel it, right? You feel the action.
You believe it, in my opinion.
You believe
like,
it.
I believe that Bob Odenkirk could do the things he does in this film. and
For
that
sure,
that is
for
a
sure.
huge accomplishment. And I
That-
don't think we should undersell that. You know
No,
that
no.
Dude,
this
dude's
is
sells it.
58. He's 58.
He's-
Saul Goodman.
He's 58. He's also 2 years older than Keanu Reeves. So do not forget that. Only 2
Yeah.
years older than Keanu Reeves.
Mm.
But yeah, like let me just say this too. Like I appreciate this is an action movie where he is not Superman. He is a guy who gets beaten and bloodied, and I really enjoy when an action movie actually gives me a protagonist that has to bleed, that has to he's not perfect. He has to suffer. He is like working out his kinks in his first fight. And he gets hurt a lot through it. And to me, that was one reason I also really enjoyed the first John Wick and didn't enjoy John Wick 2 as much because it was a little too invulnerable. So as an action movie too, like portraying a hero that is, yeah, sure, he is a superhero action guy to a certain extent, but he still gets hurt a lot and he doesn't win every fight in the prettiest way. Although I guess he does win every fight, right? So yeah, I enjoyed it, but it is a weird, icky thing. It's a weird thing to be watching and loving right now. But certainly, there are people you would not expect who get gunplay action in this movie. And on the one hand, I'm cheering. On the other, like, man, I wish we actually had this stuff in check in real life so I could enjoy this movie more.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Jeff Kanata, your thoughts on Nobody?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts on Nobody are best summed up in the form of a limerick.
I wonder, Matt, are you familiar with his limerick?
I am.
Oh, he's
with
familiar.
limericks.
So we don't need to explain it to people then.
Your tyranny has
my tyrannical reputation precedes me, is what you're saying.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's spread far and wide at this point, Dave.
Mhm,
Jeff is just a dad who's had too
I'm
much.
just a dad. Exactly. Push me too far, Dave. I dare you. All right, ready for the limerick? Here we go.
Yeah.
The setup doesn't really work, but when things start to go berserk, it would be a lie if I tried to deny. I just like watching Odenkirk.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's a
that's pretty
fun,
good.
delightful one. It's a
Yeah.
it's a little light. It's like an amuse-bouche. It's like a little
Yeah. Yeah.
like refreshing and crisp. That one was.
And I kind of feel that way about this movie. I'm gonna, I agree a lot with what Devendra has said. It's hard to talk about these kind of movies. I had the same problem with John Wick. John Wick came out, the first one came out in a week where there was this massive shooting, and which how do you put out a movie when there's not a massive shooting? It's every week. We've had like 248 in it's April. We have 248 in the country, and it's April mass shootings. So it's hard to sort of have this fun, goofy action movie that's all about blasting people in the face with guns. And
just
feeling
to
like,
be clear, sorry, like I do not at all mean to downplay like the impact. I think it's horrifying what's happening, but according to statistics, like NBC News has observed at least six mass shootings in the United States in 2021, which is defined as an incident involving 3 or more people have been shot. Like some people throw around like 500, 300 per year, and it's like let's just double check the statistics. So it is 6. That's like way too many, but I just want to point that out. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
fair enough. I had read. I guess it depends on your.
Yeah, it depends on the definition. Yeah.
I had read over 248, in fact, was what I read, which is why I said it. I apologize for hyperbole if that's the case. Either way, too many. It is this week we've had a number of them. I mean, that we'd have one mass shooting, and then a few days later, or as I was reading about that one, another one was happening, and people are like, "Oh wait, which mass shooting are you talking about?" Regardless, it's fucked, and it's hard to have fun, shoot a lot of people movie when real people are shooting a lot of people. So I apologize if my statistics were wrong.
I think the different, just to be fair, like different places are doing it differently. Like some are saying 50, some are saying less, some are saying more. So it is a lot. So I apologize.
No.
Just,
It's better to be accurate. I don't mean
Yeah.
to be, falsely inflating.
No.
I had
Like
read that
according to
number somewhere,
one,
and
it's
I
like
guess I got it.
according to CNN, it's like there's been 150 in 2020. Which is like a lot closer to that one. So it's like,
Yeah.
so I think it depends on how people are defining it, and but I have also seen like a lot of like overinflation sometimes. So I just want to just double check your sources. But regardless, too many. And I agree with you, Jeff, that like the problem with this movie for me, which is a movie I quite enjoyed, is like the message of the movie ultimately, and what we can dive a little bit more into this in the spoilers, is like you can have a movie that's like a celebration or that has like lots of violence, but that ultimately is anti-violence. It might be an unconvincing movie, you know?
Sure.
It's like how Goodfellas is theoretically anti-gangster, or
Right.
Wolf of Wall Street is anti, being a
Cocaine
stock trader.
off of a hooker's
Right,
ass.
exactly, right. And it's like, oh, well, of course, like all those people lost everything in those films, but it still makes those lifestyles like pretty freaking cool, right? And so, but ultimately, at the end of the day,
it's more than that in this movie. It's more than that in this movie. It is also, it seems to be tied to masculinity,
Right.
in this
Exactly,
movie. This man is impotent and restrained because he is a family man, because he has turned his back on this rampant violence. I mean, I think this movie has a lot in common with Fight Club, to be honest, because as Devendra kind of referenced, it's not just that he is more of a man when he pummels someone else. It is that he is also more of a man when he is pummeled. It is him receiving the pain is as cathartic to him as dishing it out. And there is something cool about, as Devendra mentioned, him sort of returning to this life and not being the perfect action hero right away. He is clumsy at first and gets a lot of accepts a lot of punishment, but there's a joy to that. Like everything about it is very much Fight Club. It's like, in order to be a man, you have to engage in these animal activities, this base sort of primal kill or be killed, hurt me and I'll hurt you more transaction. And I didn't really appreciate how that was framed. There's a moment at the beginning that is so it's wrong-headed, in my opinion, but also clunky and just bad filmmaking, when the inciting incident happens and a police officer comes up to our hero and says, well, if it is my family. It's like, how fucking on the nose can you be?
That was pretty rough. Yeah.
It's terrible. And it actually would have been a better moment. It would have been more effective if the police officer had been completely understanding and be like, hey man, no one's going to blame you. You did the right thing, and like have our hero in his head disagreeing. Like if we
the other cop said you did the right thing, but
no, I know, but like it is so like on the nose.
Yeah, you don't need to needle this character.
To
understand where he's coming from.
And you don't need to needle the audience either. We get it. We understand what he's experiencing. You don't need to hammer it over the head. And it's the whole setup of this movie, I think, is really clunky, just on a pure filmmaking level, but also on a messaging level. It just felt ridiculous to me that we need to feel that his wife won't fuck him, his dog will pee on his leg. They don't do that, but this kind of thing where it's like everybody hates you until you step up and be a man and beat the shit out of somebody.
I really wonder
domesticity is sort of emasculating in and of itself.
Exactly.
But I think also the fact that like his wife won't sleep with him, I think honestly that kind of circles back to that kind of differentiates it from the John Wicks of the world. To me, that makes it different from John Wick or the Equalizer or anything, because like Bob Odenkirk, you can buy like, oh yeah, his wife won't sleep with him. And it's harder to be like, oh, Keanu Reeves, his wife won't sleep with him. Denzel Washington, his wife won't sleep with him.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I also feel like the movie makes it very clear that once he starts murdering people, now she's into
gonna
it.
Get laid.
Yeah. And that's the thing that's ultimately like disappointing for me, is it's hard to really feel good about feeling good about this movie. Like when I'm watching it, I'm like, this is so freaking badass. And also, Jeff, you were giving that earlier scene a hard time. I mean, I think Ilya Naishuller is a brilliant filmmaker. This is a guy who did Hardcore Henry, right?
Yeah.
And
you feel at the beginning, I love the intro to this movie with like the super fast cuts where you just get the sense of this guy's life in like 15 seconds. It's awesome.
He is so good because Ilya Naishuller, in my opinion, is one of those people whose movies have to be movies. And I know that sounds like a tautological statement, but I mean, like, his movies can't be any other form of thing. They can't be books. They can't be podcasts. They can't be a stage show, right? Which like some
Yeah.
movies could be. Some movies could be that. This movie, like he uses every component of
Right.
the cinematic experience to
This
tell
is
the
not a
story.
play adapted to a movie.
Correct.
Yes.
Right.
Correct. Exactly right, and that's what I love about it. It's like you can tell just by like you could not tell that part of the story in any other format. Like in
Well, you
any
could,
other
and
format.
most people do. Much longer and more. It's a shorthand that is super effective,
Right,
and we
right.
get everything we need to get out of it. We get the monotony, we get the domesticity, we get all of everything we're supposed to get. We get in this beautiful shorthand that uses quick edits and iconic imagery in a beautiful way. So there's a lot to like about this movie. I did enjoy watching it. It's just loaded with a bunch of kind of messaging baggage that's broken. But I also want to say one thing real quick, which is I love Mr. Show. It's my favorite. It's my favorite sketch comedy series of all time. I've memorized almost all the sketches of that show. I've watched it so many times. I love it. I love it. It was a huge influence on me in college. I love Mr. Show with Bob and David. If you had told me when I was watching that show that this dude nearing 60 would be an action star, I would laugh and scoff. But it's great. There is a joy that I had in just watching Bob Odenkirk in this role.
That's it. That's the appeal of the movie.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's like a magic trick. Like we're gonna take this guy who's kind of this. You know him as kind of like a dumpy.
We will break him. We will rebuild him.
And we're gonna like make him into an action star. And it's just like when I first saw the premise, I'm like, okay, I'm super skeptical. I'm like, I don't think this is gonna. It's gonna look painful. It's gonna look awkward, and some of it does look painful and awkward, but intentionally so, right? It doesn't like when he has his first fight, he's like getting into it, and he's not very good at it at first. Then he finds his groove a little bit, and it's remarkable. It's remarkable what they're able to do.
And it even contains all of the tropes of that genre with the gratuitous shirtless action star scene. Here's this dude who's 58. We have him with his shirt off. We have the scene where the woman patches up the wounds. Like all of that stuff, but it's done almost with a wink and a nod. It's done, with the full knowledge that this dude is Homer Simpson. It's great. It's amazing. I really appreciated that about it.
Good on him for doing this. Like,
totally.
I feel like it is one of those things where maybe it's like a personal thing, a personal accomplishment. And I feel the same way about Kumail, like getting super buff for the Eternals too. But this is not to that degree. But there are videos of Odenkirk's training regimen on YouTube. You could go check it out. He can do shit. He could still do a lot of shit that I can't do. So this isn't all just movie magic. Like the dude has built up a certain amount of fitness that actually makes these fights look believable. And I can't. Who else? Who else would be the unbelievable next new action star?
Wallace Shawn.
Yes.
My Dinners with Andre too.
Yeah.
This time he's
my
getting
war
dessert.
with Andre. Sorry to step on your joke,
No worries,
Dave.
no
That was
worries,
good.
No worries. Okay, yeah. I mean, I think you guys have heard. I think the action is so awesome in this
talk
movie,
about some of that.
and but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a celebration of brutality, violence, and mass murder.
And masculinity, and masculinity,
and tying those things to masculinity, right? Yeah.
Tying those things, right? It's an outdated notion of masculinity that seems to be celebrated by tying those things to masculinity. It's like the only way to be masculine is to do this, and it's so exhausting to me to be like, okay,
it certainly is.
And also, I don't want to like. And I don't think you guys are doing this. I don't want to like hand wring and be like the movie makes people violent, because I don't.
No,
I don't draw that. I don't
not at
believe that
all.
correlation. And I think if you look worldwide, like these movies get distributed worldwide, and you don't have the same mass shooting problems that we have.
No, not what I'm saying.
But it was, you're talking about, what do these movies glorify? And I feel like for nobody, because it grounds itself first in, my quiet life of desperation and violence is the answer. But it does so in such a way that it kind of relishes it and yet because it's all done in sort of a quote unquote, you know, realistic world, like it's a mob boss, as opposed to like the Matrix where, you know, Neo, he has this quiet life of desperation, but like he goes, it's sci-fi and, you know, he's killing agents and whatever. Like you can kind of, it gives you that out that nobody wants to be like, yeah, but you know, I want to assure you that all of these Russians were bad. Like they all cheated on their taxes. They all deserve to die.
There's that. And by the way, we're talking a lot about how this movie approaches masculinity. The one like major, you know, woman with speaking role, well, his daughter too, but Connie Nielsen, who plays his wife, I do feel like there's a lot of room to do something more interesting there. Just a little more. Just give me something more, because it feels like a lot of nothing. I really like Connie Nielsen too, so that just felt like a shame. But that's what this movie is, right? It is all bros.
Yeah, it's all bros. Yeah. She plays the sort of
the put upon
convention.
wife,
Yeah, the put upon. Exactly right.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to spoilers for nobody starting right now.
Now you're looking for the secret.
You're going to see this coming.
No. But you won't find it because, of course,
You're not going to see this coming.
you're not really looking.
I have been puzzling over how it works.
You don't really want to work it out.
Who's in the box?
I have been dying to tell you.
I want to tell you my secret now.
You want to be fooled.
All right, we're at spoilers for nobody. Random thoughts.
This movie is psychotic. This movie is like just ridiculous in the way it portrays action, and I kind of love it. It reminds me of Troy Hark movies at their most wild. You know, there are shots in here. There's the thing RZA does with the sniper gun, sticks out 3 guys at once. The dude, the
3
bad
dudes
guy
at once is cool.
The bad guy just grabbing a chair, and we're like, huh, wonder what he's gonna do with that chair. Cut to throwing the chair at the guy in the hospital bed and just proceeding to beat him with the chair. It was so ridiculous. I couldn't help but cackle. Like just so much ridiculous, awesome stuff.
Well, this is my biggest pleasure from watching these movies and I think when they direct them, like the directors often refer to them as gags. I'm not sure if that's the correct terminology, but basically like they on the screen they show someone getting violently injured like in one shot. That like it looks really hard to fake what they do. But of course, in general, when they're doing it, everyone is relatively safe. So like there's a scene where there's the guy in the hospital bed and the bad Russian mobster like picks up a chair and just starts slamming his torso with this chair while he's on the hospital bed. And I'm just like, wow, it really looks like he's hitting that guy in the torso with a chair. And of course he's not, or he's doing it in a way that the guy's protected. And I just, whenever something like that happens, I'm always just like, always wondering, like, how did they do that? You know, they must have taken some like filmmaking ingenuity to do that. Or like when Bob Odenkirk shoves a knife into some guy's thigh and then kicks it, you know, kicks the knife directly into it. I'm like, wow, that looks incredibly painful. But I know probably no one got hurt doing this. How did they do that? And that's kind of like the action scenes. I'm just always wondering, like, wow, that looks ultra violent. Probably no one got hurt. So I'm delighted by the illusion of filmmaking.
And so creative. Like the creativity is really what I'm grading this movie on. And like there's so many flourishes, there's so many like little bits that are just so, for people who love like schlocky action movies and certainly like well-made ones, I feel like this is catnip. Yeah.
I like it when he collapsed that dude's throat and then gave him a tracheotomy.
Man. Oh man. Yeah.
That was nice. It was like,
it shows he's a good guy.
I don't want to kill him.
He doesn't want to kill anyone. He just wanted to have a little fun.
Life, but that inch is crucial.
I think, you know, I was talking about how this movie compares to John Wick, and John Wick is about like they killed his dog and everyone's like, uh-oh. This movie has an even flimsier premise than that.
Love it.
Well, it seems to me to be even commenting on John Wick.
Yes.
You know, like it's a cat bracelet. And then he finds it in his own apartment, which is so great. He's like, the guy never even fucking took it. It's so good.
Yeah, it wasn't even locked. And so it's just like for no reason, it could have easily been avoided, basically.
That line, by the way, is in the trailer. Like, where is the kitty cat bracelet? Yeah. Which is also what sold me on this movie completely.
Yeah. Great use of Pat Benatar's Heartbreaker. Really love it. And actually, I quite enjoyed all the needle drops in this.
Yeah, the needle drops are great.
This is a movie that uses like fairly obvious needle drops, but I really enjoyed them. You know, usually I don't like it to be too on the nose, but this is not a subtle movie. Okay, that's the thing. It's not a subtle movie.
It is not a.
Well,
subtle
and also
movie.
those needle drops are sort of like meant to be like they're kind of like easy listening songs in a way that's like, yeah, the hits keep on coming on the music.
Would you say?
and
Would you say dad rock?
I would give it up
They're
for
all
Dad
dad.
Rock,
It's
yeah.
all dad rock, but yeah.
But
Biggest,
yeah,
I
like
mean-
it's meant to soothe you much in the way
Yes.
that the action is.
biggest disappointment for this film, other than its flawed and outdated outlook on masculinity that we've already discussed copiously, is wish we'd seen a little bit more of his panic room in the basement. You know, there's that moment
Listen,
when he says goodbye to his
You only have a
family.
budget for so much. You have the budget for the door. That's it.
Right, and the door is like, ooh, it's one of those doors that like slides. You know, I'm like, this. You must have really thought this through. And then, nope, you don't get to see the rest of the room. So that's a little bit of a disappointment. But I mean, there's just so many great moments. I actually like watched the movie, and I had a 48-hour rental. Right, once you start watching it, you're 48 hours. And this morning, I rewatched all the action scenes, just the action scenes, because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
So good. Christopher Lloyd actually getting to kick ass. How old is he now? Amazing.
Slightly older than
Why
Bob
isn't he
Odenkirk.
ripped?
A lot
I-
older.
He is
I
82 years
don't
old.
understand
Yes.
the relationship between the two of them. You know, so he's like this crazy FBI, CIA fix-it guy, right?
Yeah.
His dad is like former military, I
FBI,
guess.
Yeah.
Former FBI too.
So there's some tacit understanding they have of if anyone comes into your room, murder them.
Yeah.
They're
you got
they're
the
just like
signal.
Yeah, he got
old
the signal. He got the
father
signal.
son murdering pals. I guess I don't.
Well,
I don't
mean,
know how
that's
that
really
works.
what this movie is about. At the end of the day, it's about how killing dozens of people can bring a whole family together.
It's
you
true.
know,
Yeah.
It's true.
between
dad,
him and his
all
Well,
he
not
dad.
the
does
people
is
who were killed.
watch
Those
his
families
stories.
are shattered. But
Yeah. He always watches stories until that one day where he gets to blast someone in the face with a shotgun, and then all's good again. He's got a pep in his step that he didn't have since the last time he murdered somebody.
gets to hang out with RZA. It's great.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Like, and there's a post-credit scene. Like, give me that RZA Christopher Lloyd spinoff. Like, I would watch that. That'd be a
Yeah.
lot
I mean,
of
this
fun.
movie does really clearly set up a sequel, right?
Yeah. This
So-
movie sets itself up to be in the John Wick universe. Like, I want this to happen. Okay, I want this character. What is his name even? Hutch
Hutch.
Mansell.
Hutch
Needs to
Mansell.
be in a John Wick movie at some point.
Handing out gold doubloons. or
Exactly.
whatever.
Oh yeah, when he got out the gold bars,
Yeah, I
I'm
was
like,
like,
oh, this is
mhm.
just John Wick now. It's just
It
John
really
Wick.
is John. Yes, I
Yeah.
had the same
I mean,
thought.
he had to go see the barber. You know, played by Colin Selman, a man with. I see him like randomly in things, and his voice is just perfect. Perfect. I always feel like he's giving me a hitman mission or something.
I almost kind of wonder, like, does Derek Kolstad have like one idea?
Yes.
Like, if, like,
Yes.
because
Exactly.
He also wrote a couple episodes of Falcon and the
Winter Soldier, yeah.
Mhm.
And there's a scene in like that is very John Wick reminiscent. And I'm not going to spoil it for people who haven't watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but like I watched it, I'm like that same scene happens in John
Mhm.
Wick too.
I-
You're lifting from yourself.
Yeah.
I honestly wish the movie hadn't gone so John Wick, to be honest. I thought the first, section of this film up through the bus fight, it almost feels like it could be Die Hard, right? It feels like average Joe pushed too
Mhm.
far. And in the bus fight, he's not particularly great at it. He's just willing to take a lot of punishment in the very
He's
John
still
McClane
pretty good
way.
at it. He's just taking a lot of hits too. Like,
yeah, but
his
John
hits
McClane
are
that's the
bad.
John McClane
Yeah.
thing, right? Is that
Yeah.
I'll run across the glass and I'll get the shit kicked out of me. I just won't quit. And I was like, I kind of wish the movie was more of that instead of it being
Yeah.
all the John Wicky, secret underground association of informants and all that stuff, where he really turns into this cartoon superhero.
Yeah, the world's best killer.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it would have been much more fun if he really was just a dad pushed too far, but maybe he used to be in the military or whatever it is. But I think that's actually, for my money, a more interesting action movie is the Die Hard, the guy who would
Right.
never put himself in this situation but has to rise to the occasion.
But then,
Yeah.
then you just get a lot less action, right? Like,
Yeah.
as great. I love Die Hard, but that movie has to really, ration its big action sequences because McClane is such an everyman in that
Yeah.
first movie, at least. Then it gets crazier and crazier.
I will say I enjoyed the Home Alone-esque ending, and I
Mhm.
thought when it comes to like this movie compared to like Skyfall, the Home Alone-esque ending feels a lot more at home in like something that's so outrageous and silly like this, that
I wish they'd made more of a big deal about that. You say Home Alone, I was thinking A-Team, right? My favorite sequences of the A-Team were the outlandish preparation they made, the
Yeah.
way that they'd modify the van, all that stuff. I
You
love
guys are
when a
just
plan
really
comes
trying to
together.
anger all the Sam Peckinpah fans over here. So yeah,
Fair enough.
coming
But-
at us. Yeah.
But I wish they'd made a bigger deal about that. Like the joy is setting up the Rube Goldberg machine.
Yeah.
We don't get any of that. We only see the result of the Rube Goldberg machine.
Well, you
and-
see him setting up, but you don't understand what he's doing necessarily.
Right.
But that's true of Home Alone as well, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, they showed him doing a few things like the rebars and the explosive rebars. And I'm like, I just want to see what happens with those. And the movie lived up to that promise. So,
yeah.
Chekhov's rebar really got a full dose of it. Okay. Any other thoughts? Nobody. A lot of fun. Reevaluate. Like, don't take its messages on masculinity too seriously. Probably
sure.
people won't anyway.
I don't believe that the wife would just be like willing to go through all this again. Like the last line of the movie is just like, hey, does it have a basement? Ha ha! Cut the credits.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
put my
Hot
children in
again.
danger again for this.
This is why she married him, because he was the hot killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, those are our thoughts on Nobody. You can rent it right now on premium video on demand. And you've been listening to the Slash Filmcast. You can find more episodes of the Slash Filmcast at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Our theme song comes from adamwarrock.com. Our spoiler bumper comes from YouTuber Kyle Hillinger. Check out his YouTube channel. Our weekly plugs music comes from Noah Ross. This episode was edited by Beatty Zhang. Next week on the Slash Filmcast, we are going to be discussing Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat.
We have to shout the title every time.
Yes, every time.
Yeah. Every time.
And got a cool guest in line for that, so that should be a lot of fun. It's going to be streaming on
Did you
HBO
get
Max.
Scorpion himself?
I wish. You know how I actually, I did get him. You know how I got him? I said,
Do it,
get
do it,
over
get
here.
Over here.
You can expect more of that next week.
Even our guests can't pretend to like our stupid jokes.
No,
Matt
I
Goldberg.
was hoping for a get over here joke.
Matt Goldberg, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Slash Filmcast, man.
Oh, the honor is all mine. I've been a fan of the show for a long time, and it's great to be on.
Matt's going to be sticking around for the After Dark, which you can get exclusively over at patreon.com/filmpodcast. We'll be talking about The Empty Man and a couple of other things. Thanks for listening to the Slash Filmcast. We'll see you next week.